The wind had stilled. A strange hush settled over the range like the moment before a storm unleashes its fury. Sarah stood alone at Station 10, her back straight, boots planted in the cold concrete as the entire Olympus Shooting Club leaned in, some to witness her downfall, others too stunned to hope for her victory. Her fingers curled around the wooden stock of her father's M1 Garand. The scope on the club's rifle had been subtly sabotaged. She wasn't going to give Alex Sterling the satisfaction of watching her stumble on tampered ground. Not now. Not after everything. She loaded the old rifle with the reverence of a soldier honoring a vow. One round at a time. A click. A breath. Silence. Alex stood nearby, arms folded, his grin long gone. His last score, 98 out of 100, was nearly perfect. Nearly. But nearly wasn't enough. Not today. The digital scoreboard blinked, ready to tally the final 5 shots. Tiffany's phone was live, her lens trembling with anticipation. Chad hovered like a scavenger near a fresh kill. The elite members of Olympus, their tailored coats pulled tight against the creeping cold, watched from the gallery, sipping lattes now gone lukewarm. Sarah closed her eyes. One breath in, one breath out. She fired. The shot cracked through the air like a thunderclap. The scoreboard lit up. X. A perfect bullseye. A whisper surged through the crowd. She chambered the next round, her breathing synced to a rhythm only she could hear, a rhythm born in desert wind and echoed in her father's calm baritone, steady on the exhale. Let the rifle speak. She fired again. 10. Another shot. X. Tiffany's camera jerked. Chad's jaw slackened. Alex was pale now, frozen in place, his pride unraveling with each digital ping. A 4th shot. 10. The score hovered. Tied. All eyes turned to Sarah for the final shot. And then flash. From the corner of the gallery, a burst of light exploded like lightning. A camera, aimed directly at her, snapped at the exact moment her finger began to squeeze the trigger. Her sight picture blurred. Gasps. Sabotage? Someone had tried to break her. Again. Sarah froze, her finger held steady but motionless. Her heart pounded in her ears. The crowd watched with bated breath. Alex leaned forward, a smirk returning like a shadow creeping out from behind defeat. She could hear her father's voice in her memory, clear and strong. Your mind must be calmer than your pulse. You're not just aiming with your eyes. You're aiming with everything you are. Sarah exhaled, long and steady, shutting out the noise, the lights, the weight of centuries of arrogance pressing down on her. She pulled the trigger. Silence. The scoreboard blinked. X. A perfect score. 100/100 with 3 XS. The silence fractured into a roar. The Olympus Club, once a fortress of wealth, status, and ridicule, erupted not with applause alone, but with disbelief, respect, and a shattering of everything they thought they knew about who belonged and who didn't. Alex Sterling's face turned ashen. He marched toward the judge's table, shouting, "This is rigged. She must have cheated. No one pulls that off. That rifle. Check that rifle." But Miss Regina Albright raised her hand, calm and lethal. "We did. And what we found was sabotage." Alex blinked. Her voice grew louder. "The modified triggers. The offset scope. The instructions? They came from your technician. We have video. Audio. You signed off on it, Mr. Sterling." Security footage rolled on the club's large screen. Alex's voice, clear as day, was heard directing the modifications meant to sabotage Sarah's equipment. The room turned on him. Gasps. Murmurs. Someone dropped a champagne glass. General Finch stepped forward, his medals gleaming beneath the range lights. "Mr. Sterling, you are hereby expelled." Effective immediately. Alex tried to speak, but the words crumbled in his throat. Tiffany lowered her phone. Chad turned off his live stream. And Sarah? She stood alone at the firing line, wind tousling the edges of her jacket, her hands still resting on the worn Garand. Her father's rifle. Her father's legacy. No victory dance. No smug smile. Just the silent satisfaction of knowing she had walked into Olympus alone, disrespected, and emerged not just as the winner, but as the woman who dismantled an empire built on ego. As the crowd murmured and shifted, as Alex Sterling was escorted out, his once golden reputation now shattered like glass underfoot, Sarah Bellwether remained still. Not triumphant, not boastful. Just quiet. Steady. Present. She walked away from the firing line not toward applause, but toward her father's rifle case, kneeling down beside it as though returning something sacred to its rightful place. The M1 Garand, heavy with history, had delivered her father's final message better than words ever could. General Finch approached her, hand outstretched. "That was the finest shooting I've seen in years," he said solemnly. "But more than that, it was the clearest statement of honor we've ever witnessed in this place." Sarah nodded, standing with calm dignity. "I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here to keep a promise." Regina Albright joined them, visibly moved. "Miss Bellwether, I hope you understand the gravity of what you've done here. You didn't just win a competition. You broke something rotten that's been festering in this club for decades." She extended a formal invitation, a permanent, honorary membership to Olympus, a place on the club's ethics committee, a headline feature in every shooting journal that mattered. But Sarah declined. "I appreciate the offer," she said, glancing around the club's polished floors, its glass trophy cases, its echoing corridors. "But I think my place is somewhere else." And she meant it. 2 weeks later, Sarah returned to the modest compound where the Veterans Foundation shooting program was housed. The dusty trail leading to the facility was a far cry from Olympus's Valley Circle, but it felt real, human, grounded. She walked into a training bay filled with quiet men and women, former Marines, soldiers, pilots, some with visible scars, others carrying wounds deeper than skin. They greeted her with nods. No fanfare, just trust. She lifted the M1 Garand from its case, now a permanent fixture of the program, and spoke in a voice that carried firm across the lot. "This rifle belonged to someone who taught me that strength isn't about who you beat. It's about what you uphold." That day, Sarah led the veterans through breathing drills, stance work, and marksmanship exercises. But it wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about reclaiming rhythm, control, peace. Colonel Marcus Thorne visited often, sometimes just to sit in the shade and watch. He'd smile to himself, watching Sarah at work, as if seeing a piece of his old friend, the late Colonel Thomas Bellwether, still alive and moving through the world. One day, after a particularly good session, he approached Sarah by the range's edge. The sun dipped low behind the hills, staining the sky in shades of amber and violet. "You know," he said, "your father would be proud, not just for how you shot, but for how you walked away." Sarah looked out across the line of targets, some riddled with holes, others still pristine. "He used to say that a straight shot means nothing if your spine isn't straight too." Thorne chuckled. "He said a lot of things, but that one always stuck." In time, the foundation named the program the Bellwether Initiative. Veterans from across the country applied to be part of it. It wasn't flashy. No influencers, no live streams, no sponsorships. Just soul work. Every week, Sarah wrote in a leather-bound journal she kept in her locker, an old habit passed down from her father. Notes on posture, mental resilience, stories of breakthroughs she witnessed in her students. On the final page of that journal, several months later, she wrote, "I walked into Olympus with nothing but a jacket full of dust and a rifle full of memory. I left with something far greater, proof that skill can speak louder than privilege, and honor, when held steady, can silence the noisiest doubt." And she closed the book. One spring afternoon, long after the firestorm of media coverage had died down and Olympus Club had changed its bylaws to ensure what happened could never happen again, Sarah received a small package in the mail. Inside was a letter, handwritten and trembling in script. "Ms. Bellwether, I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to tell you, watching you that day broke something inside me. I realize now that I've spent too much time performing for cameras and too little time confronting myself. I'm stepping away, not out of shame, but because it's time I learn what you already know. Alex Sterling." There was no return address. Sarah folded the letter gently and placed it inside her father's rifle case. She didn't hate Alex. She didn't pity him either, but she respected that at least he had looked inward. That, perhaps, was the beginning of change. Years passed. Trophies collected dust at Olympus. But at the Bellwether Initiative, growth flourished. More veterans returned to the line. More trauma was soothed through breath and control. More people stood taller, steadier, just like Sarah had, when the world tried to break her. And through all of it, she never once forgot the final lesson her father whispered, long ago on a quiet range at sunset. "Shoot straight, live straight, and never let the noise shake your aim." Sarah Bellwether did exactly that. And in doing so, she didn't just win a match. She changed the course of every soul who thought they had lost their shot.